Welcome to the Leadership Purpose with Robin podcast. I'm your host, Robin L. Owens, PhD, and this is where we dive in each week to give advice, tools, and tips for high-achieving women leaders, and we talk about leadership purpose and its importance for you. I am a college professor, and when I am not doing that, I am speaking, writing, coaching, mentoring, and teaching high-achieving women leaders how to find, and not only find, but how to stay in alignment with their leadership purpose so they can make a meaningful difference right there in their career, leadership, or business. Okay, let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm grateful that you take time out of your day to listen in to our episodes. And today, I am here with the amazing Dr. Kim Middleton. Let me tell you a little bit about Kim Middleton. She's an academic strategy consultant at ACUE, the Association of College and University Educators. Her almost 20-year career in higher education has focused on experimental, high-impact teaching practices and environments that create transformative learning for both students and faculty. As a professor, administrator, and scholar, Kim's work has attended to the core values of liberal arts education and new approaches to foreground their enduring relevance. Kim was the founder of the Center of Academic Innovation and Creativity at Mount St. Mary's University in Los Angeles. In that role, she designed and implemented professional development opportunities and pilot programs to support both faculty interest and institutional strategic initiatives. As a second-generation educator, Kim began her education at the back of her mother's classroom. I love that. And she has earned her BA in Literature, Language, and Theory and a PhD in English from the University of Notre Dame. Welcome, Dr. Kim Middleton.
Dr. Robin, I am so excited to be here. That was a long bio. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess I did do those things. Excellent. Okay, good.
You did all those things and more. So I'm so glad you're here to share, because that gives us a sense of your background and what forms your thinking and how you respond. And so that helps us. But, we did all that. That was sort of a formal kind of introduction from your bio. But why don't you tell us all a little bit about who you are first, about you, and then about the work you do?
Sure. So I like that question because it assumes, right, that who we are is related to the work that we do, right? That those two things are entwined. And I think that is absolutely true. I don't know that I've ever phrased it to myself before, but I think we know that. So yeah, I think it's important. I think in that bio, it was important for me to talk about the fact that my interest in education absolutely came out of being the daughter of a public school teacher and watching my mom do that work. My mom is Korean American, and I think I learned a lot watching her navigate the world in that way. And then I was lucky enough to go to a college that really foregrounded alternative education, right? Like didn't have grades, didn't have majors, all of those sorts of things. And so I think if you grow up in a household that really emphasizes high performance and set standards, and then you go to a place that says you set your own standards and you learn how to work to your own goals and objectives, it'll kind of blow your brain up, but it will also really help you rethink what you want to do in the world and what matters and how those systems of standards are somebody else's construct. I think for me, those were kind of the two formative poles that I've been kind of chasing, right? My whole career. How do I create those same kinds of experiences for other people where, like you say, who we are should be mirrored in what we do? And then how do we take seriously the standards that other people set in the world, but then how do we carve our own path? And education for me has always been the place that's right in between those two, external standards and also the opportunity to, really think differently about who we can be, the world we want to live in, and a really powerful motivator and also a very powerful gatekeeper. So that is in a nutshell how I think about those two things together.
Yes. And I love that. I love that your education started, you were as an educator, you started in your mother's own classroom. And to hear the distinctions you're making, I would imagine that gives you too a measure of balance because you had the experience of kind of both sides of the spectrum, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I think we should also probably acknowledge, especially for your listeners, right, that the reason I was in the back of my mom's classroom is because their public school teachers aren't paying for daycare, right? Like there's not money to do that. So when it's summer break, but you're teaching, your kid is just like hanging out in the back of the classroom.
In the classroom.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really valid point. All right. So tell us about the work you're doing today. You heard me read that, the background. So tell us in your own words about the work you're doing these days.
Yeah. So I work for a company. You and I have worked together at Mount St. Mary's University. And so I come out of a very sort of traditional academic background. That's the external standard part. And at some point, I really wanted to see how education worked outside of the academy. So I've been very lucky to work for this corporation that we call ACUE, the Association of College and University Educators. Their mission, our mission, is around creating student success and equity through quality instruction. And what that means is that when teachers in higher ed have evidence-based practices that we know work with students achieve. And everybody's kind of chasing the same thing, right? Like we want to make sure that all students have access to opportunity, but we also want to make sure that they can succeed in courses. And we know that there is disproportionate success for minoritized students, for students who are Pell funded, all of those things. So the company that I work for provides evidence-based practices for faculty. It gives them a structure to implement practices with their students. And I think the story that I hear more and more from educators that makes me super excited is that when they start to do that work, when they have what they need to do the work that they want to do with students, it's transformative, right? It changes the way that you do things. And so I think for me, that's what I'm in it for, right? I want people to experience transformation. I also want to experience transformation. And then I want to know that it is going to have an actual outcome for students. And we have some good research that shows that. And I think that has been, for me, the most exciting part. Prove to me that it works. And then I keep seeing study after study after study of how the faculty that we've worked with, their students fail less often, get better grades, retain in courses. So it is worthy of celebration.
Yes, it is. It is. And I'm celebrating that with you as a person who, is an advocate for education on all levels. And I love that. I get the image when you talk about your work that you are like the teacher of teachers, so to speak.
Yeah. And if I don't want to belabor this point, but I will say the one thing, this has been a recent change, and it's the thing that I'm really excited about. One of the ways that my work has changed, because the company has changed, is that when I first came to the company, I was doing this work exactly as you say, like working directly with faculty. And I think over time, what we've realized is that this course can really be more and more impactful the more faculty who do it, which makes sense, right? Like if you and your colleague are doing it, your student's getting kind of twice the benefit. If we can do it at scale, if hundreds of faculty at a gigantic institution can do it. So that means that now I'm working with systems of schools that have 100 campuses. And we're thinking very strategically about how to get their faculty situated so that they can do this work. And the very geeky part of me loves that. I'm like, yes, let's go big. I want to go big. I want to see how a system can be put into place that removes obstacles for faculty and students instead of like one by one by one by one. I want to do it on the scale of hundreds and thousands of faculty and students. So that's my new exciting challenge and also, opportunity, which is great.
It is an opportunity to kind of create and work and make sure those systems are working to the best that they can, right? And so you were talking about a little bit, you're beginning to geek out a little bit. So that leads us right into the next question, which is when you're thinking about the work, what lights you up? Now, you alluded to that a little bit, but maybe if you can have some specifics about, or maybe not, but whatever lights you up when you're doing your work?
Yeah.
And why?
Yeah. And why? That is an excellent question. That's probably the harder question. Yeah. I mean, I think it's two things. So it's always two things. I don't know why. It's always two or three things. It's never just one thing.
It's okay. All things are welcome.
My degrees were in literature, right? And I don't know if this is true, but I'm just going to pretend it's true. I think one of the things that literature lets us do is it lets us look at the individual in a story, right? We love a character, right? We love The Great Gatsby. We love Harry Potter, like whomever it is, these individuals. And then it also creates a kind of structure or framework, right? Like the narrative works a certain way. It's broken into chapters. Blah, blah, blah. And so my theory is that either my love of literature created this or it brought it out. But that's, for me, what gets really interesting. The individual experience and then the system, the structure that holds it together or allows it to happen. And so I love it when I hear individual stories about faculty and students. We just released a set of video interviews from students thanking their faculty members for all the work that they did this past year. I have shown that video to faculty maybe 15 or 20 times, right? Like it's a lot. I'm like literally crying every single time because it's so you see what it meant to that student, right? And I'm like, yep, that's it. That's what I want. I want the student to feel impact. So that's a piece of it that really I'm just like, okay, it's totally worth it, right? For me to do what we're doing. But it's also sometimes, especially at that system level, right? Of 100 campuses across an entire state. And sometimes like you just set all the pieces in place and there's a kind of beauty and clarity to how it can work when you know it's right and you've put all the pieces in place and you know it's going to, once you get that structure set, you've put all the pieces in place for this thing to create that individual impact in all of these places. And there's just something to me that's very aesthetically appealing about a good system. No, it is. It's
I know.
Yeah.
I'm
right,
laughing. I'm laughing because I know that about you, but go ahead.
Right. I like knowing all the pieces. Maybe it might be just slightly OCD, but yeah, it is. It's a beauty in the system and knowing the system is right and that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. And it makes me like itchy when you see a system put together and a piece of it is wrong. It's just like, it bugs me. And like until we can. So yeah, you can tell by the way I'm talking about it, right? I'm like, that's it. It's the people in the system. So yeah.
And I'm laughing and I say, I know that because I know that's part of your gifts, one of your many gifts. And it's important to have that. And the way you're talking about all these campuses, especially, the numbers of people that the system has to work for, and it all has to work together in, a harmonious way. And so it's tremendous work, but I'm laughing because I know that's part of your many gifts.
And how did I get good at talking about that, Dr. Robin? What could it have been? Years of conversations of how we learn to surface our gifts.
Yeah.
I got good coaching. We'll just say it.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Good coaching. Okay. All right. So now that we know that you have this as part of your gifting and that you have all this experience and that started from an early age and has come all up until this day. So you have developed lots of experience and expertise during that time. And so the people who are listening now, it's a wide range, but I say I start this podcast for high achieving women. High achieving women, by that, I mean women who they could be in a official leadership role, unofficial leadership role, professional woman, but the one who is doing all the things and supporting everyone else and rarely gets support for herself. And so this is why I created the podcast, to bring in guests like you to share from your experience and to offer some word of wisdom, some advice. And now let me make a point to say there are other people who are listening to the podcast too, which I'm sure could learn from the advice. But given that, what's one piece of advice or a helpful hint you could give to whoever's listening in this moment?
I think that many of your guests have said a version of this, and I really wanted to do I was just like, okay, like it's what else do we have, right? In the portfolio of things. But it is really true. You cannot be the one person who is holding up all the things. And I know we just have this tendency to do it, right? And like, if I don't do it, it's not going to get done. If I don't do it, it's not going to get done right. All these people need things, like all of it. I think so many of us are drawn in that direction. And I get it. But I feel like you have to build your support network. And that can be things like this podcast, right? A lot of that can be things that are out in the world that you just need to hear and experience so you know that you're not alone. But I would hope that it's also the people around you, right? That you are pulling from all these people around you, because I'm no expert in this area, but I cannot do it alone forever. Like there's just a limit to how long you can do that and be effective. And I just feel like we get more and more diminished the more we try to do it alone. The one piece I will add, after listening to all of your very smart guests, I heard a great interview 100 million years ago with Bell Hooks, and she was on like public access television, and someone called in and said, that they were a graduate student at some university. And I think it was like a young African-American woman calling in saying, I'm a graduate student at this university. Nobody looks like me. Who do I go to for a mentor? And Bell Hooks was like, you need a mentor, and you have to broaden your scope in trying to find who that person is. And coming from her, right, somebody who is so attentive and so smart, I was just like, oh, that's so resonant. That's right. We can't get caught up in like putting blinders on. Our mentor or our community has to look a certain way. They have to fit in a certain box. Like there's a great place to be a really divergent, inventive thinker as you assemble that community of support so you can keep doing the work you want to do. So
yes. I'm inspired by that. It's right. And by just hearing you say that, it's helping me, and even in that second, to think out of the box in terms of my own, who I can reach out to and who could be a mentor of sorts. Okay. So as you know, my work is about leadership purpose, and you and I have known each other for a long time. So you know that I'm all about leadership purpose. But when you hear the term, what comes to your mind?
Yeah. We worked for the same place that is very good at messaging this, right? Which is, again, don't get caught up in thinking that leadership only exists in the way that you think it exists, right? It is not only people who are in a certain echelon of work. People are leaders all the time, right? In all kinds of ways. So that piece, I think, really resonated. And I don't think we can say it enough. People are looking for leadership. And that can be in your community. That can be in your house, right? That can be people are looking for people to help them sort of carve a way forward. And then I think the other point, and I think you and your guests do this so beautifully, is that purpose piece. And to me, I don't even know how you have, the leadership piece without the purpose piece is empty at best and dangerous at worst. I think if you don't know why you're doing something, or if you don't if you let it slip off your mind, it's really easy to be in a position where you are bringing other people along behind you and to sort of lead them astray. So I think that notion of like purpose as beacon is so important in terms of how people are doing the work that they're doing in the world.
Yes, I of course love that. Purpose as a beacon. Purpose as a beacon. And so it sounds like you're saying this, but let me just ask anyway. Do you think leadership purpose is important for everyone? And if so, why?
Yeah, so I don't want to sing a song of negativity, although I might be. So here, let me make it like not so scary, right? But I'm going to guess that most of your listeners are busy people and are making like 1 billion decisions a day. Yes. And we know from research that decision fatigue is a real thing, right? Like you make so many of them and your brain just is like, I can't take it anymore. So it's pretty easy to come up with examples from our own lives where it's like, we're just making decisions at the end of the day. Like, yeah, just do that. And if we don't have a grasp on the priority of the purpose, right? Oh, the purpose is the thing that guides all those decisions. Then you're making decisions kind of arbitrarily, right? Like, yeah, just to get it off your plate, you're just kind of going through. Whereas when it's the beacon, when it's a thing you always return to, I think that decision-making tree gets very clean and easy. And then you just know that all things are kind of lining up behind it. And that's always what I want. I mean, we've seen leaders who lose their way, right? And have built a juggernaut. I'm thinking of certain tech companies, right? Who kind of didn't know how big it was going to get in the beginning, didn't really think it through, and are now trying to clean up on the back end. And it's hard to clean up. Like decisions that you made without really thinking about your purpose for hundreds of millions of people instead of making purpose-led decisions on that.
Yes. Yeah, I'm reflecting on what you're saying while you're saying it, that part of it that is, if you go astray, could really, really lead you astray.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Wow. You've given us some nuggets to think about. And especially for me, I'm thinking about this. We've had conversations before, but listening to you today is really helping me to rethink how I'm thinking about this. And the time always flies by so fast. So we're coming to the end of our episode now. But let me just say, is there anything else you want to say before we head off into the next part of our day?
I would say I so appreciate always having the opportunity to talk to you and being included in the pantheon of guests that you have had. But I also want to say that a lot of the thinking and articulation around leadership and purpose that I have comes out of experience, but really comes out of your work, Robin, because I think it is easy to have a vague feeling about purpose or that sort of longing toward having a purpose, right? And being a leader, but not being kind of squishy around it. And so I really value the clarity and process that you bring to having people get right so that they can kind of make their way forward in the world.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that. That means a lot to me. It really means a lot to me.
All of it true.
Now I'm imagining there are some listeners right now saying, I'd like to hear more about that Dr. Kim Middleton and the work they're doing over there. They might be, whatever area of profession they're doing, they might want to know more about you and the work you're doing. And if that's the case, how can they be in touch with you?
Sure. So it's easy to find me at ACUE, right? So it's just ACUE.org. And then you get a sense of the organization, but that's also an easy way to get a hold of me. Please, please, please get in touch with me via LinkedIn. I think that's a nice kind of professional networking opportunity. Kim Middleton is probably not, you're probably going to get about 90 of them, but I think if you put in ACUE, it'll pop up. And if you are truly just bored and want no part of my professional life, but want to know all the dorky stuff that I'm interested in, then the best thing to look at is probably Instagram. That's what's happening in the back end of my brain as I do, work in the world. And that is just middle K at Instagram. And I would happily share, food pictures and pictures of plants with people all day long in that format as well.
Okay. Thank you for all those ways to get in touch and experience different parts of you. And I'll be sure to put those in the show notes so people can have them. Okay, everyone, this is the end of our episode for today. Thank you for being here. And if you want to learn more about me or be in touch with me, you can contact me on my website, robinlowens.com, or you can reach me on social media, Robin L. Owens, PhD, Robin L. Owens, PhD. And for now, this is the end of our episode. See you next time. This is Dr. Robin. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Leadership Purpose with Robin podcast. If you enjoyed it, head on over and rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode. New episodes drop every week, and I can't wait to hang out with you again soon. Meanwhile, this is Robin signing off. See you next time.